Good evening and welcome to Treasured Moments in God's Word. Tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to tell part of my testimony. God has been dealing with me for some time about this, and so tonight we're going to just see how it goes. I became a Christian when I was 13 years old, and then I got baptized on Easter Sunday. I have been a Christian for quite a while, but my walk has not always been a stable walk, to put it mildly. In 2001, I married my husband. We got married in September. Been married for 15 years. For a long time, we did not want children, and we had talked about it several times. And then in 2009, we decided that maybe the time was right for us to start a family. So we began trying, and my heart was always wanting children, I think, in some small little way. But up until 2009, we really weren't ready for children. So we began to try, and as time went on, every month I would get so upset when there was no baby. So after a year and a half of trying, we knew that something wasn't quite right. So I went to the doctor, and she began testing to see if we could figure out what was going on, what the problem was. We got through some of the preliminary tests, and they found out that it was me. I was the one that was having the trouble. They just could not figure out where the trouble was. So they were going to do some more invasive testing. So we were having to wait. And on January the 3rd of 2011, I found out that we were expecting. I go to the doctor for my first checkup. I was so excited. They do all the pre-baby counseling of, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. You can drink this, you can't drink that. Those kinds of things. They give you all this information to take home and read. But they would not do an ultrasound just yet. And so we had to wait. I was right at 12 weeks when they were going to do my first ultrasound, so we could actually see the baby for the very first time and hear the heartbeat and all that kind of good stuff. So the day came that I went in to have my ultrasound. My husband had a very strenuous job at the time. He could not break away from his work to come with me, so my mother and my mother-in-law come. And we go into the ultrasound room, and the lady comes in to do the ultrasound. And she starts checking and checking and checking, and she says, well, sometimes you're not as far along as we think you are, so we need to do an internal ultrasound. So I was like, okay, y'all gotta go. So I kicked both of them out. And she does the ultrasound, and as time is clicking on, I noticed she was very quiet, and I never could hear her heartbeat. And although I had been in the medical profession for a long time, it had been a long time since I had been around ultrasounds for babies. So she never did turn the sound on. And then she said, well, the doctor will be in to talk with you in just a few minutes. And I thought that was kind of unusual, but I was like, well, maybe that's just a protocol that the doctor has to be the one to show you the ultrasound and go over it. So I sit there and I wait, and I wait, and I wait. And the longer I sit there, the more panicked I become. I was like, okay, something isn't right. Something is very, very wrong. And the doctor comes in, and she walks over to the ultrasound machine, and she says, well, the good thing is now we know that you can have a baby. However, and at that point, she swings the ultrasound machine around so I can see the actual picture. She says, the amniotic sac is messed up, and she says, you have what we call a corneal ectopic pregnancy. Well, at that point in time, I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, well, how's the baby? Is the baby okay? And she said, the baby didn't make it. And I said, but you're saying that the baby is there? And she said, yes, but I've only seen one pregnancy to ever survive a corneal ectopic pregnancy, and it was very high risk at best. She said, well, this was on a Tuesday, February 6th, when this happened. She said, Thursday, I'm going to bring you back, and we're going to do another ultrasound. She said, I want to do blood work today to see where you're at. She said, right now, your lab values should be skyrocketing. They should be increasing every 24 hours, so it should be extremely high by the time you get back. And that's just, that wasn't her exact wording, but that was similar to what she said. So they drew blood work, and of course I went home and I just lost it. I started crying and carrying on. I called Brian. I said, "You've got to meet me at the house." He's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, I don't care what you're doing. Meet me at the house." And I said they couldn't find a heartbeat on the baby. And at this point, I was 12 weeks along, so there definitely should have been a heartbeat. And so he met me here. And when I got home, we dismissed the grandmothers. We sent them back to their houses. And I fell apart. And Brian's like, "You've got to hold yourself together. If there's any chance of this baby making it, you've got to hold yourself together." But deep down, I already knew that the baby was gone. So Thursday, Brian goes back with me to the doctor. And they were very nice. They actually had a different waiting room that they put me in. They separated me out because there were other ladies who were expecting in the waiting room, and it's hard enough, but when you see others that are further along in their pregnancy, they don't want to be a witness to somebody who has lost a baby, and it's painful for you to sit in there and watch somebody who is having a successful pregnancy. So for everybody's sake, they moved me into a different area so I could be separate and have a little more privacy. They do another ultrasound, and then they put me in a quiet room, and the doctor comes in and she looks at my lab work, and she said, just from the lab work, she said, "I know the baby has not made it. It is deceased." She said, "Your labs should be skyrocketing right now." And she said they're dropping, and they're dropping pretty rapidly. She looked back over the ultrasound, and she said, "The problem is the baby itself is actually shrinking, which means my body is trying to absorb some of the tissue." But she said the sac and the amniotic fluid is still growing. And she said, "Where it's located, if we don't get this out," she said, "you will rupture. And if you rupture, you will bleed to death before you get to a hospital." She said, "You got 3 options. We can give it a week." But she said, "A week is all I will give it, and see if your body will naturally get rid of the pregnancy." But she said, "By now, you should have already done that. But if not, a week at the most, and then we're going to have to go on to something else." She said, "Or we can do a D&C. She said, "However, the tool that I have to use, I don't think will bend far enough around for that to be successful." And she said, "I think we'll just be putting you to sleep for nothing. It won't work." She said, "The third option, which is the one right now that I would lean towards, is using methotrexate. Methotrexate is a chemotherapy agent. It's used for some kinds of breast cancers, but it also is used to help with chemical D&Cs for what surgery would not work well for." So she said, "I'll step out and let you and your husband talk about it, and I'll be back in a few minutes." And when she stepped out, I fell apart again. I was already an emotional wreck, and I fell apart again. And I can remember telling Brian, I said, "Don't let them take my baby. Don't let them take my baby." And he said, "Honey, the baby is dead. The baby did not make it." And from a logical medical professional standpoint, I knew that. From a mommy standpoint, that was not something I wanted to hear. And even now, to this day, sometimes I would think, if I had only waited a couple more days, would that baby have made it? And I know the answer is no, but there's always that little bit of doubt. If I had waited a couple more days, would the baby have made it? So on February the 10th of 2011, I went into the hospital and I received 2 shots of methotrexate. And then I had to come home and wait. I went for a whole week carrying around a baby that I knew was dead. The following Saturday, after 6.5 hours of labor, I finally miscarried. And I grieved hard. There were times that I was begging God to let me die. I wanted to die. I just wanted to curl up and go to sleep and never wake up again. I didn't know how I was going to live. It got bad. And during this time, I was still trying to work. I would I would go to work. I would just have to go in and close the door sometimes and just have a meltdown and then pull myself together and go on with the day. And then at night, I would become almost a complete vegetable. I would just lay in the bed and basically let me crawl in a hole and pull a rock over me and just let me be. That's where I was at emotionally. I was to the point that I was done. The doctor wanted to find out. We knew now that I could now get pregnant, which was one of the big questions, was would I even actually be able to have a baby? So the doctor knew that yes, I could. So they wanted to find out why it was that I had miscarried. Number one, why did it take so long for me to get pregnant? And number two, why did I miscarry? What happened in there to cause a problem? So they did a test, and she found out that I have a bicornate uterus. And I said, well, this means I can still have a baby, right? And she said, right now, I want to say the chances are slim to none that you're going to be able to carry a child. But she did say, I want to send you up to UAB for another opinion. She said, I know one of the physicians there that specializes in this. And she said, let's go ahead and get you sent up there and see if we can get another opinion just to make sure. So during this time, I had continued to grieve. And then I was grieving the fact that in my mind, I had already made up I wasn't going to be able to have a baby. This was it. I went into even deeper depression. I became very angry with God. I was angry at why could other people have children and not love them, not care for them? Why could it be so easy for others to have babies, but yet it was so difficult for me to have a baby? And then when I finally was able to get pregnant, I lost my baby. And I found myself over the course of time becoming very, very bitter, very angry. I was mad at God. I would also get angry when someone would say, oh, honey, I understand what you're going through. That would make me so mad because my feelings are my own. Your feelings are your own. You don't understand how I feel. I don't understand how you feel. Even though you may have gone through something similar, my feelings are my own. Don't deny me the right to feel the way I do. One day, one of the ladies at work, she was walking by my office and she stopped off and asked me how I was doing. And I told her that, I was having a hard time. And she told me her story. She said it would be a really good idea for me to read Heaven is for Real. She said that helped her in her healing process and that she thought that would be a good idea for me. She also told me that another thing she had done was got a mustard seed and held on to it, and during her time she would just hold that mustard seed and pray and cry and pray and cry, and that helped her in her situation. So what I did was I went and I got the book Heaven is for Real. It took me about a day to read because I read straight through, and there was a couple of places in there that really helped settle my spirit about what had happened. There's one spot in there where he talks about meeting a sister that he never knew he had, and come to find out the mother had had a miscarriage, and they did not even know if it was a boy or a girl. And when he was spending his short time in heaven, he actually got to meet her. So that helped calm my spirit down about, okay, my baby is safe. She is in heaven. Jesus has her. She is good. And another thing I did was I went to Walmart and I got some index cards. Just some of the little 3.5 by 5 index cards. And I bought a little thing of mustard seeds, and you can get those in the spices aisle at Walmart for $1.50, $2. So I got those. Come home. I taped one of the mustard seeds to the index card, and I wrote, actually I've got it here, I'll show it to you. There it is. I wrote, have mustard seed faith, and it says, have mustard seed faith, I will have a healthy, happy pregnancy, I will have a healthy, happy baby. God has, is, and will continue to bless me, my home, and family.